Hi everyone, my name is Terri and welcome to my channel, The Pink Dumbbell Problem, and this is a new video in my In the Discourse series. In the Discourse is just a little opportunity I take every so often to highlight some things that have come up in the news or on social media, particularly on Twitter, because that's where I am most of the time, anywhere really. And I've got a couple of really good ones for you today. Also, it's been a while, haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. I took last week and a good chunk of this week off of working on videos and a number of other things because last weekend was our provincial fitness instructors conference and I'm the showrunner for that. My feet are still killing me. So that's why there was no video last week, and I thank you for coming back this week and sticking with my channel even with the gap. Here's the first story. Samsung apologizes for Advert. This is a news article that came from BBC News. It's about the tech company Samsung, who creates, of course, phones and things like that, including the phone I'm filming this on, and an advertisement that they've been running on television there that shows a woman going out jogging at 2 o'clock in the morning and enjoying the peace and quiet of a nice jog. Hey Samsung, tell me you have no women working on your ad writing team without telling me you have no women working on your ad writing team. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but particularly going jogging for women or people who appear non-binary or are very easily readable as LGBTQ+, can be a very, very, very dangerous activity. Now, of course, it depends on where you live, but generally speaking, if you're in a heavily populated area where there's people out and about after dark, even at 2 a.m., there will be people who want to target women who are exercising in public. And it sucks and it's stupid, but it's the norm in a lot of cities. And it doesn't even have to be nighttime, by the way. I know women who've been harassed in broad daylight because they were jogging in public. For some reason, it just attracts the attention of the absolute worst kinds of men who think that they are entitled to interrupt women. Speaking of which, here's the next one. Now, this one comes from my friend Stephanie on Twitter, who's also a fitness instructor. She's down in the States. She retweeted this from another account from Natalie B. Fitness, who is a fitness instructor and is working on creating her own gym. As a trainer who works in community rec centers and has worked in commercial gyms in the past, this is something that I have actually had to step in on a number of times. So what this tweet actually is about, it's a video clip, and it shows her working out and a man coming up and butting into her workout and trying to tell her how to do the hip thrust that she's going to do there. Nothing that has anything to do with the actual exercise, and she's not in distress. And a number of people on the comments are calling her out and saying it's fake because it's a recorded video. They're obviously acting out the parts here, but what they're acting out happens all the time. What I really love about this, though, is Stephanie's little bit of commentary on this, which is basically don't be that guy. And even as fitness professionals, as she points out, we wouldn't interrupt this way. If you're actually a qualified trainer, you don't interrupt other people's workouts like that. There's a certain way that as trainers, we've been taught to approach people in an educational way, in a much more welcoming and non-confrontational tone. The other thing that's a bit of a clue, and you don't see it in this video, but I've seen it happen on the floor many, many, many times, is that when men interrupt women like this and try to school them on how to do a particular exercise and, they think they're coaching them, there will be some opportunity to brush their hand against that woman's body or touch them in some way. So let me be absolutely clear about this. If somebody is a legit professional qualified trainer, they will never touch you without asking for your explicit consent. Even if it's to correct your posture or your grip on something or your stance in a lift, anything, I never lay a hand on somebody without asking. And I ask even the same clients time after time. Yeah, that's a huge red flag. And again, as I said a few weeks ago, there's no actual legislation for certification for trainers. So there's a lot of people out there calling themselves trainers and doing really unprofessional stuff like that who have no business being on the floor. And if you're going to work with somebody or somebody approaches you, ask for their credentials. Now, both of those are a bit of a setup for the third one I want to talk about, and that is this. This is what the fitness industry doesn't know, and it's from Amanda Mull in The Atlantic, and it just came out a few days ago. Great article, no notes. Everything that they've written in here about problems we have with the fitness industry not being welcoming enough and not being beginner friendly enough is definitely accurate. And again, I work in community recreation level of fitness, so it's very different. But if you're going to more corporate, more commercial gyms, yes, absolutely, you'll see the stuff that she's written about here. So it's not the article that I want to talk about. It's the comments. As often happens on any social media platform, and Twitter's notorious for it. The comments bring up a lot of interesting things, shall we say. My policy on this channel is to not identify people who say bad things or have bad takes on things, because my hope is always that in a few days, weeks, months, years, whatever, those folks will learn better and they will come around on this. And I don't want my videos to be something that haunts them in the future. So unless they're a very public figure, I don't really name names on this channel. But you can go and see some things on the post. You'll get the gist. But it takes in the comments that I was interested in were a couple of people. And of course, you don't really know who's behind a Twitter account, but they appeared to be all men, who were saying, you don't need a gym, you don't need a trainer when you can just do this on your own. Nobody needs to be taught how to do this. And you can just go walking or you can exercise outdoors. One even said something about like, you don't need equipment, just do body weight exercises at home. And that's fine if you know how to do that. But here's the problem. Going back to the Samsung commercial, there's a reason why women have to often go to gyms. It's because it's not safe to just go for a walk or go for a run in a lot of neighborhoods, in a lot of cities. And the timing of the Samsung advertisement is mind-boggling because it was only a few months ago in January in Ireland that a young woman, 23-year-old woman named Aisling Taylor, was murdered in broad daylight while she was out jogging. Like, joggers are a target for these kinds of people who want to do these kinds of crimes. Yeah, extremely poor taste that Samsung did that. You know, to be fair, they've apologized and everything, and that's great, and I'm glad that they did that. But if they had hired somebody who was a woman who works out, who jogs, they would have avoided all of this in the first place. People ask me all the time, like, what's the point of having a gender studies degree? What can you do with a gender studies degree? Like, what does that train you for work-wise? It trains you for things like this. If Samsung, or the advertising company that they used, had actually hired somebody who understands these things, particularly, again, if they are experienced with exercise and gender issues, they would have avoided all of this in the first place. As somebody very astutely noted on Twitter, the only woman involved in making this advertisement is the actress who's jogging in the video. Okay, so there's your connection to the Samsung article. The other thing is, and I've talked about this in a few other videos, again, I'll put some links down below. One of the big concerns I have when people say just do some body weight workout at home is that is a very privileged position, and it's privilege of having had easy access to physical literacy. And I've talked about physical literacy before. That is basically what it sounds like. It's being literate in physical activity, it can be exercise, sport, any kind of physical activity. There's so much bad teaching about fitness and exercise and sport and everything out there that there's no guarantee that somebody is doing something well on their own. So this woman came into the rec center gym on Tuesday, just a few days ago, and she's 70 plus. And the first thing she said to me is, I have no idea what is going on here. I've never exercised ever before in my life. And so she's of a generation that really didn't get phys ed access in schools, and girls certainly weren't allowed to play sports. Now, I know there's going to be people out there who go, my mother or my grandmother is in her 70s and she played basketball in college. Some people had access to that. Depends on where they were geographically and where they were socioeconomically. Middle or upper middle class or wealthy family, and they got to go to progressive universities, sure, they got to play. I think this person was coming from somewhere quite rural. We were talking about what each machine does, and I'm like, well, you want to start off with a little bit of a cardio warm-up. And she was like, oh, cardio, so that works my muscles? So she's had so little education in science and physical education in her life that she didn't know that cardio is short for cardiovascular system. And that cardiovascular system means your heart and your circulatory system. So I actually had to back up with my information and try to not overload her and explain that the cardiovascular system and the musculoskeletal system are two different systems of the body, so we exercise them differently. And that lifting heavy things is for the muscles and doing fast things is for the heart. Explaining very, very basic concepts like that about how the body works and how exercise works is what I do most days. That was an exceptional situation that she didn't even know the difference between muscle and cardio, but it's not the first time I've had to explain that, particularly to women who are well into the senior years. Girls and women having access to phys ed and sport varies not only by age, but by location. But basically, the older somebody gets, the older the generation they belong to, the lower the chances are that they had any real access to physical activity in their young developmental years. People who got the access to that early physical literacy training as kids just tend to assume everybody knows. It's like the whole throwing like a girl myth, right? That girls inherently are not very good at throwing a ball. No, it's training or lack of training, not nature. And of course, there's natural variation in human skills. And as I also said on my Twitter thread, it's like learning an instrument. Some people naturally are very musical. They can pick up instruments, they can play around with them, they can figure them out. Some people are actually born with the capacity for perfect pitch. But even if you're born with that capacity, you still have to do the musical training to know the names of each of those notes and know how scales work and things like that. You're not born playing like Eddie Van Halen. Like, get a grip. Even the most naturally gifted musicians still have to learn the theory. They have to learn the techniques hands-on on the instrument or with their voices. They still take lessons from other people because there's always other things to learn. That's one of the great things about music as a career or a hobby. There's always something new to learn. Exercise is really no difference. It takes learning and it takes practice to get good at the skills. None of this is inherent. Some people might seem to be naturally more gifted. Maybe they have better hand-eye coordination or proprioception or something like that. But they still have to go learn what a deadlift is and how to do it properly. Honestly, I can spend an entire week teaching the basics of squats. They're not something that people just automatically know how to do. And at the same time, like the guy in Natalie's video that Stephanie posted, don't assume that just because somebody's a woman, they don't know how to do it either. That guy was totally just trying to get in there. The other thing, too, is that in addition to gender and age having an effect on whether someone accessed physical literacy throughout their life, ability or disability also has an effect on that access. So it depends on what the priorities are in your life. If you're dealing with an illness or a disability that's taking up your whole life, going to the gym or going to join some kind of sport club is not going to be your priority. So the idea that people can just go out and have a jog around their neighborhood and all of that sounds lovely, and maybe that is something we will achieve someday. But for right now, that's not a safe option for a lot of women and a lot of other marginalized people. And that's not a good option when it comes to safety and effectiveness and planning of a workout if you have no background whatsoever in this. Thank you so much for watching, and please have a look at the links down below. This video kind of ended up being a bit of a recap of like maybe a dozen other videos and things I've brought up elsewhere. So I'll throw some links below. You can have a look at that. Also, don't forget to share this with friends because that's how I'm going to get the word out and make this channel grow. Thanks so much, everybody. Lift heavy, fight the patriarchy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.